All right, what up, y'all? So, like I promised, here's the start the offense, and let's talk about ambiguity. So, the big thing about ambiguity, right? I'm really saying you have to be open ended, and it's not open ended directly in your pressure as much as the fact that you need to sit there and never make your pressure look linear. And I think that's something that is kind of slept on, not really talked about enough when it comes to the basics of pressure. I think we get all into the actual basics of talking about stagger pressure and all that, but we forget this overlying thing that actually highlights how well you can actually structure your pressure is understanding how much ambiguity can you leave in your pressure. And I think Lin is the perfect unique character to showcase this. I could have showcased this on multiple games, any unique character, but I think Lin has the perfect set of frame data to really grasp what I'm talking about because of the fact that she has certain things that are roughly the same and other things that are drastically what? So yeah, like we always talk about stagger pressure, right? Basic staggers. Like, yeah, this exists. Rebeats exist in a French bird game, right? But that doesn't really tell you how do you make your pressure actually unique enough where for your opponent's case, because they have to pay attention to where they think they can mash, what gives them the illusion that they can mash, but it's clearly not obvious. And this is where ambiguity comes into play. So yeah, you have your basic staggers, right? And you can sit there, just 5A, time it, it's -2, 5 frame, clear gap I'm leaving in there, right? But what about leaving a genuinely larger gap than normal? So it looks like you completely stopped, right? Already a big layer of ambiguity added there. Diving deeper, especially in a game like Uni. One big thing, I don't see it enough. No cancels. Drastic thing that you can introduce to your opponent, they have to be ready for. Is the fact that just because you know frame data, and I'll actually talk up more on this, does not mean that the frame data is true. This is the most unique thing that I'm going to talk about, and it's going to be my next video on nuance. But it's the whole frame data as a construct thing, right? Frame data as a constructor, or you're only plus if you a bitch. Which, like, those type of statements, it's explaining the logic behind those. Back once I did a series way back once I was actively uploading shit for BB, someone was in the comments, and I'll never forget it, because they were talking about a character being +1 on their jab, because they're one of the few characters that's +1 on their jab. But the thing is, +1 only matters if you enforce the +1. I think that's something completely, like, not thought of. Just because you're plus doesn't mean I care that you're plus. If you're not going to enforce the fact that you're plus, does that mean that I care that you're plus? And what does that mean, right? So, on the opposite side of the spectrum, I'm -2. 5B is also -2. Just because I'm -2 does not mean that you're automatically going to react and mash. It just doesn't. It really just doesn't. Like, I can do 5B, and maybe I micro dash throw, just because you weren't expecting me to not cancel off 5B. So I can do all of this pressure string, then I can sit there and do a dash throw, just because you weren't expecting that whole reality of me dashing off of 5B and me not canceling at all because it's -2. Especially in a game like Uni, because again, I can rebeat, right? So it's like, I can sit there and do all this, and I can do a late delay cancel rebeat. And maybe if you press a button, and I'm here at this range where 5A whiffs, because you press a button there, my whiff actually covers your hurt box being extended for you pressing a button, and then I get a counter hit there. There are things like that that you can layer into your pressure structure that's not just the standard, like, oh, wait, let me just do stagger pressure in the most traditional sense, right? Because you can sit there and do all this, and what does this gain you? This is a whole bunch of mids, or lows and mids. Like, none of this is not going to sit there and open someone up. Even if you sit there and commit to an overhead, right? Now you're highly committing to overhead that's generally negative for most cases on most characters. Very few cases where characters' overheads are plus. So now you have to overcommit for the overhead, where it's like you could sit there and just adequately do your mids and change the game alone. Like 2B no cancel. Yeah, 2B is -5, but if you expect me to not leave it alone and just let the 2B rock, I was like, I might get a pressure reset just off of that, just because you're not expecting me to just let it rock. And I think Lin 5B is the perfect example of this because it's -2. Because now you have to be prepared that I can sit there and just leave this button and I'm basically at the same frame data, both my 5 AR and 2 AR. Like, unless she does... Oh, actually, 2 AA is also -2. So, literally, it's basically still a poke. It is same frame data as her pokes. Better starter and everything. Frame data as her pokes. So you have to consider that the whole entire way. Same way, there's the gimmick that I like in certain games like Uni, where it's like spacing yourself for where your rebeats, right? Yeah, this is -1. But if you space yourself far enough, you can space yourself out for like, oh, you rebeat all the way out in Timbuktu. And this whiff here, you see this 2B whiff? This is another case, is like if I'm spaced out far enough, this 2B will probably catch you if you think, oh, I can contest that. They're far enough away. They're not really plus there. Because -3, right? -3 from this distance, Hyde will probably press a button. That's just like the reality. -3 this far, might press a button to contest. The 2B covers that. Just because of the fact that even though it looks like I whiff here, this 2B on reaction after the whiff makes it so it's like after this whiff, I'm covering my ground to sit there and still be like, no, don't mash there. That's a very unique, like, spacing based frame trap, and things like that exist. Like even out here, like this, you can make that work. Just naturally, you can make this work depending on the spacing. It's very unique for me to think about it in this version of the game. And it's like, yeah, it's like I'm -1, but you are recovering, so you could mash. You can DP. Those are things you can consider. Even before you get into, like, specials, right? And, like, oh, super cancels and force press frames and all that. Like, there's so many options that aren't just the standard options of the really the standard thought process to approach pressure. Where it's like, you can intentionally just not do anything. This is something I love doing. Not doing anything, where it's like, sometimes I'll get in your face, and then I'll just stand here. I'll just look at you. Because sometimes with me just looking you in your face, you're going to be tempted to do something. And if I'm confident in my timing, I will be confident enough to sit there and feel, okay, you'll press a button here, and then I'm going to counter hit you for it at that moment. I'm going to wait until the last second where it's like, all right, you're finally going to press a button, then I'll hit you for it then. Same way, it's like, all right, for the characters that do have mix-ups, like the special case of Lin, right? High, low, right? Both. Well, he and his -3 this version. That's different. But -9 for the low, right? But even then, it's like, you see this, you have to guess. You still see the animation, and you partially have to guess. Just based off of that, right? So it ends up being a mix-up, but at the same time, it's like, the way you introduce that mix-up can depend. Because you can sit there and just do 5/8 straight into it. You can start with the low and just completely skip the high, right? Same way, it's like, you can sit there, do a whole block string, leave yourself open-ended negative, and once they think it's like, oh, they can press something, you hit them with the frame trap based off the special. Like, there's many ways to approach just the basic frame trap game if you think about how to implement it. Are some of them risky? Yes. You are always going to be playing that game where some of the options you choose can be a risk. Like, even with your standard pressure, it's like, if Hyde DPs me, that's not standard pressure. Like, I'm still going to lose the DP here. Like, if I randomly get DP'd, I get hit by BDP. It's going to happen. But all in all, it's like setting shit up like this makes it so you're not in your standard realm of like, I'm being so linear with my pressure that they can always think about how to interact with it. Especially in a game like this, the shielding, or in a game with instant block, right? Where timings can be all you need to get hits. Because if they are adamant on like instant blocking or getting certain shields, those timings can easily be thrown off to get you extra frame advantage or get you an extended turn. Or in the case of instant blocking on certain games, you get locked out and you just get hit. Where literally that can all be just gained from changing timings. So instead of bow bow, it could be bow bow. That's simple. And so it's like there's a lot of simplicity to what I'm saying here, but it's the thought of actually incorporating it, and that's where it comes into play. You have to actually incorporate some of this stuff and to make it as unique. Same way it's like Vorpal, right? I keep forgetting she can't do that for BDP, but it's like having options like that, right? Plus, like Rilin, right? She has TK Kuga too. Like the difference between you doing run up TK Kuga and you doing run up dive kick, drastic. Like the Kuga, as known as plus, right? Everyone's used to Kuga being plus, but the dive kick, it's -3, and just this dive kick can lead you to a lot if they're not expecting the dive kick, because they might block the dive kick and then it's -3 and react late. And then it's like, wait, why'd they do that? And then react late, and then you get a pressure extension or a counter hit because they reacted late. And sometimes the goal is not to sit there and get the guaranteed hit, is how can you set up the hit, right? Which is why I had a whole section on reward sourcing and value. Because the thing about reward sourcing is sometimes being able to set up the scenario where you gain the reward is better than forcing the reward to exist. And cases like this where it's like you can just be negative on block, and if they're not ready for you to be negative on block, you can do a lot with that alone. Same way it's like having specials, abusing Vorpal, or noticing someone's shield timings and abusing their shield timings in the case of Uni, and or if you're in like BB, their barrier timings, if they frequent using barrier. Like knowing all of that helps you greatly, even before you get to abusing all the extra bullshit a character has. So that's the quick start to offensive structure / pressure. Not gonna keep this too long because I've done a lot of recently long videos, and this is actually rather simple. It's just understanding the application of it and actually getting in your head that just because your character can be all mids or technically have lackluster pressure does not mean your pressure itself has to be lackluster. It is how do you use things, and that is a big thing. Later, y'all.